In 2017, by his own account, the media theorist Douglas Rushkoff flew out to a private resort in the middle of the desert. He expected to deliver a keynote on the future of technology to 100 or so investment bankers. Instead, he was shown to a plain round table, and his audience was brought to him. 5 men, all of them, as he describes it, from the upper echelon of the tech investing and hedge fund world, at least 2 of them billionaires. They asked which region would be less affected by the coming climate crisis, New Zealand or Alaska. They asked Bitcoin or Ethereum. And then, Rushkoff says, the chief executive of a brokerage house explained that he had nearly completed building his own underground bunker system and asked the question he had actually come to ask. How do I maintain authority over my security force after the event? The concrete was already poured. The problem was the people. They call it the event. That is the word in that room. The collapse, whatever it turns out to be, climate, unrest, a virus, a war. The men at that table were not discussing how to prevent it. They had moved past that. They were working on the logistics of outliving it. And they had a specific practical problem. After the event, money would be worthless. Guards with guns would have no particular reason to keep taking orders from a man who could no longer pay them. So, as Rushkoff tells it, they kicked around solutions. Special combination locks on the food supply that only the owners knew. Disciplinary collars of some kind worn by the guards in exchange for their survival. Or robots. Build robots to serve as guards and workers instead. Combination locks, shock collars, robots. That was the escalation in one conversation in about a minute. There is an industry that sells to these men. In the Kansas farmland north of Wichita, inside a decommissioned Atlas missile silo, a company called Survival Condo sells luxury apartments. A 15-floor complex running about 200 feet down to its lowest level. Evan Osnos reported on it for The New Yorker in 2017. Because there are no windows 200 feet underground, the walls are fitted with LED screens showing live video of the prairie above. If you would rather not look at Kansas, you can choose pine forest instead. One prospective resident from New York City wanted video of Central Park. All 4 seasons, day and night, the engineer Mark Minoski told Osnos. She wanted the sounds, the taxis and the honking horns. Consider what that request actually is. She was not buying a view. She was buying the city she was leaving, on a screen, underground, permanently. The most ambitious company in this business was Oppidum, which announced a billionaire bunker in Czechia and became briefly famous. In October 2024, a Swiss newspaper ran a picture of it, captioned, "One of the world's largest luxury bunkers, 323,000 square meters." The picture was not a photograph, it was a visualization supplied by the company. So was the one Forbes had run. And Forbes had printed that same numeral back in 2015 in feet, 323,000 square feet for the surface property, with the shelter itself listed at 77,500 in the same article. Same digits, different unit. In meters, the bunker is almost 11 times the size. When the Swiss news site Watson went looking for an actual photograph of the world's largest luxury bunker, it found none. Watson had been putting questions to the company since February 2024 and was ignored or stalled. More than 8 current and former employees would say nothing. In early December, the founder Jakub Zamrazil finally wrote back. One sentence. Oppidum bunkers had ceased operations at the end of November. Which brings us to the only place on Earth that has genuinely done this. Not for billionaires. For everybody. Swiss law requires a protected shelter place for every resident close to where they live. Roughly 370,000 shelters hold about 9 million places. Coverage above 100% nationally, though inner cities and outlying regions still have local gaps. The specification is federal law. Each place is at least 1 square meter of floor and 2.5 cubic meters of space. 1 dry toilet per 30 places. And the equipment an owner is legally obliged to supply has consisted since 1987 of bunks and dry toilets. That is the list. Build housing in a municipality that is short of places, and you must build and equip a shelter. Owners who are not required to build pay a replacement contribution instead. Since January 2026, a flat 1,400 francs for every place they did not build. And they hid them. The federal inventory of Swiss combat and command structures ends with an appendix of odds and ends. In the Ticino volume, the first entry in it is headed simply Tarnungen, camouflage. It names the canton's significant examples: stables, rustici, the stone farm huts, and in the German text, Felsimitationen, imitation rock faces. A government cataloguing its own fake cliffs. At Gland, about a kilometre back from Lake Geneva, one bunker is a pink house with its windows painted on, curtains and all. The inventory files it as the work Bergerie Route, the sheepfold on the road, and notes that it is also called the Villa Rose. The association that restored it gives the reinforced concrete as 2.5 meters thick, with 10-centimeter steel plate at the gun slits. And a few pages earlier in that same inventory, at a Jura crossroads west of the Col du Molendru, there is a caption that gives the whole game away. The camouflage on that work, it observes, clearly reveals the assumed direction of an enemy attack. They only bothered to disguise the side the enemy would see. So the shelters exist, the law is real, the concrete is real. In 1987, they tested one. The Sonnenberg Tunnel under Lucerne was, when it opened in 1976, the largest civilian nuclear shelter in the world. 20,000 people, 4 blast doors 1.5 meters thick, weighing about 350 tons each. A 7-story cavern inside the mountain, holding command rooms and an emergency hospital. From the 16th to the 21st of November 1987, they ran an exercise called Ameise, Ant. The ventilation and the emergency power did not work as they were supposed to. The great doors would not close properly. By later accounts, one of the 4 never sealed at all. The west tube alone was meant to be fully fitted out. 10,000 berths. By later accounts, about 2,000 went up in the time allowed. Partway through, with the press watching, the exercise command conceded that a full fit-out was not a goal. It was a hope. Then somebody did the arithmetic. The shelter was provisioned for 2 weeks at 4 liters of water per person per day. 2 weeks was also how long people were expected to remain inside, and the estimate was that it would take the civil defense teams 2 weeks simply to finish setting up the beds. The time to move in equaled the time you could survive. The shelter would have been ready on the day the water ran out. Lucerne cut Sonnenberg's capacity to 17,000 and then to 2,000. In 2006, the city abandoned the idea altogether. Since then, the Swiss have been unusually honest about what they have. Their own federal brochure says the shelters give very high protection against near hits and against flying splinters. But against a direct hit from a conventional weapon, it says, they offer hardly adequate protection. And in a consultation document dated October 2024, the Federal Office for Civil Protection states flatly that it has no reliable figures on the age and condition of the shelters. 370,000 of them. Near Gstaad, a former army bunker is now a data vault its operator markets as the safest in Europe. The two-page fact sheet making that claim misspells the word according and misspells purposely as well. In 2010, the then chief executive told Swissinfo that their smallest client might be a student somewhere in Singapore, paying 9 francs a month. So what is actually true? The water is rising, not as a wall, as arithmetic. It took 12 years for global sea level to rise 30 millimeters, 9 more years for the next 30, then 7.5. There is no granite citadel under the Alps built for billionaires. There is something stranger. A country that spent 50 years building a shelter for every human being inside its borders, tested one, and found the doors would not shut. And there are 5 very rich men in a room, with the concrete already poured, asking how to keep the guards loyal once the money stops meaning anything. They solved the mountain. Nobody has solved the guard at the door.